The most striking truth about self-concept corrosion is that the most devastating attacks on your identity are the ones you eventually agree with. We generally assume that we can simply ignore an insult, but in high-pressure dynamics, a steady drip of micro-invalidations can be used to make you dismantle your own self-worth. Why does the person who knows you best often end up being the one who makes you feel the most broken? This is the core paradox of self-concept corrosion, the moment your own capacity for self-reflection is turned into the mechanism of your own erasure. So let's really dive into this. What we're exploring here, it's not about diagnosing someone's intent or character. It's about looking at observable patterns, how our brains can get nudged into misinterpreting an identity edit as a hard truth. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow a pretty clear path. We'll kick things off with that paradox, then we'll unpack a really key idea called narrative overwriting. After that, we'll get into the specifics, a 3-step pattern that keeps popping up. We'll also look at the psychology behind it all, and then, and this is so important, we'll talk about the tools for building something called identity sovereignty. All of that is going to lead us to the final, crucial takeaway about protecting your own inner world. All right, let's start with the core paradox itself. I mean, how does something as healthy and human as self-reflection get twisted around and turned into a weapon against you? This question, this is really the heart of it all. It's this deeply unsettling experience that so many people have reported. You know, you think someone has this unique insight into who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, all of it. But then, over time, that insight starts to feel less like support and more like a constant critical audit. Their feedback becomes the main way you see yourself, and that lens, it just seems to find flaws everywhere. It's this bizarre and painful flip of what intimacy should be, where the one person you've given the most access to starts using that access not to understand you, but to define you, and usually in the worst possible terms. So this slide really shows the fundamental shift that happens. We all start out with what you could call an autonomous self-view, right? We have our own sense of who we are, our history, what drives us. We own our story. But in a corrosive dynamic, this gets swapped out for passive reflection. You stop defining yourself and you start seeing yourself only through the other person's eyes. They kind of become the expert on you, telling you what your real motivations are, and almost always reframing your actions in the most negative way. Your self-worth gets completely tied to their feedback, and before you know it, you're looking to them for the truth about yourself. And this leads straight to a state the source material calls identity atrophy. Just think of it like a muscle you stop using. I mean, if you constantly outsource the job of defining yourself to someone else, your own ability to trust your gut, it weakens. You stop trusting your own instincts. You start second-guessing every single decision, every feeling, because you've been sold this idea that your internal compass is just fundamentally broken. This is when people report needing permission just to feel good about themselves, which is a huge red flag that their own autonomy has been seriously compromised. So how on earth does this actually happen? Well, it happens through a process with a specific name, a system that's pretty much designed to replace your internal view of yourself. The key term to know here is narrative overwriting. And look, this isn't just about criticism or a few insults. It's a systematic process. The research often points this out in environments where self-improvement is really just a cover for behavioral management. You know, think of some predatory coaching, high-control groups, or certain kinds of really enmeshed relationships. The goal is always the same. Replace your own story about yourself with an external one that's almost always negative and, funny enough, always serves the controller's need. Now, one of the most powerful tools for narrative overwriting is something called the Revisionist Trap. And it's incredibly insidious. It doesn't just attack who you are right now, it actually goes back in time and poisons your past. Your achievements? Oh, those were just flukes. Your past confidence? That gets relabeled as arrogance or denial. What this does is it just systematically dismantles your entire foundation. I mean, if you can't even trust your own history of success, what basis do you have to trust yourself today? It creates a past you're ashamed of and a present you're completely afraid of. The cumulative effect of all this is what individuals describe as identity vertigo. It's that really profound, disorienting feeling that you just don't know who you are anymore. You might look in the mirror and feel this total disconnection from the person you remember being. That person felt confident, they felt capable, they were clear. But this new version, it feels confused, flawed, and like you're perpetually a work in progress. And this isn't an accident. It is the direct result of having your self-concept systematically taken apart, piece by painful piece. Okay, so now that we have that vocabulary down, we can look at this specific three-step pattern that researchers have identified. This is basically the playbook for how this kind of identity management works. Right, this process is subtle, but it's incredibly effective. It all starts with step 1, the helpful observation. It's almost never a direct attack. Instead, a core strength of yours is cleverly reframed as a serious weakness. The example on the slide is perfect. Your passion and your drive are relabeled as an anger problem. Or maybe your meticulous nature becomes debilitating anxiety. Your empathy becomes naivete. And because it's all framed as this caring observation, you're kind of encouraged to take it seriously. Then comes step 2, the repetitive drip. Once that seed of doubt is planted, every single thing you do is now filtered through that new negative label. So if you get excited about a project, they'll say, see, there's that anger again. If you double-check your work, you really need to get that anxiety under control. It's this constant low-grade invalidation that just hammers home the new narrative. And this all builds to step 3, which is really the tipping point, the internalized script. This is the moment their external voice becomes your internal voice. You start to see yourself through their lens, and you actually begin to preemptively point out your own flaws. You'll find yourself saying things like, I'm sorry, I'm probably just getting angry again, before they even have a chance to. You've become your own critic, and you're effectively doing their work for them. So why is this pattern so effective? Well, the answer is literally in our own brain wiring. We are hardwired for what's called social consistency. We have this deep biological need to align how we see ourselves with how we think important people in our lives see us. It's a survival thing. So when a dominant story is presented to us, especially by someone we trust, our brain works overtime to resolve that conflict. And often, the path of least resistance is to just adopt the external label. That's why you start to self-attack. Your brain is just desperately trying to get back into alignment. This leads us right to the psychology behind all of this. What are the core motivations at play here? I mean, why would someone do this? And what is it that makes us vulnerable to it? You've got these two opposing forces. On one side, the motivation is often about total narrative control. Think about it. If someone can successfully define who you are, if they can convince you that their version of you is the real one, they gain incredible leverage. You won't act against their story because you don't even feel like you have the internal permission to. Then on the other side, you have the vulnerability, a deep, very human need for attunement. So many of us are taught to value feedback, to be open, to always be working on ourselves. But in this dynamic, that healthy impulse gets hijacked. The need to be seen and understood by the other person starts to outweigh the need to trust and validate yourself. And this whole thing gets amplified by a psychological principle called self-verification theory. Now, the surprising thing here is that our brains don't just look for positive reinforcement. We actually seek out information that confirms whatever our current self-view is, even if it's negative. So once narrative overwriting has started and your self-view has soured, this theory predicts that you'll subconsciously start looking for evidence that confirms it. You'll actually look for proof of your new flaws, which creates this self-perpetuating cycle of negative identity. It's wild. This quote just perfectly captures the end result of this whole process. The journey of self-discovery, of asking, who am I, gets totally replaced by this performance-based existence, centered on the question, am I fixing myself yet? Identity is no longer something to be explored. It becomes a problem to be solved, a project to be completed, with the controller acting as the project manager. It's a really profound and devastating shift. Understanding the pattern is absolutely the first step. But how do you even begin to rebuild? Well, the key is moving from just recognizing the problem to actively reclaiming your own story. The first tool described here is a kind of self-analysis called the Day Zero Audit. And the crucial point here is that this isn't about confrontation, it's not about fighting back, it is purely an act of recognition. It's about taking a quiet moment and asking yourself these really powerful questions. Has your internal monologue, your self-talk, been colonized by someone else's voice? When you describe yourself, whose adjectives are you using, yours or theirs? Is the growth you've been so focused on actually making you better, or is it just erasing the real you? And are the flaws you obsess over really true, or are they just part of a script you were taught to perform? The whole goal of that audit is to achieve what's called identity sovereignty awareness. This is a practice of radical observation. You simply notice the labels, the ones applied by others and the ones you've applied to yourself, without that immediate knee-jerk reaction to fix them. And this creates a really important shift. You stop treating the labels as diagnoses and you start treating them as data. You begin to realize that what you thought were your inherent flaws might just be a learned script. This simple act of detached observation is what starts to interrupt that whole neurochemical cycle of self-attack.
And all of this leads us to our final and honestly most crucial point. This is the absolute core of reclaiming your internal territory and protecting your sense of who you are.
This statement, this is the foundation of identity sovereignty. Let's just let that sink in for a second. Other people can observe your actions, sure. They can interpret your words. But they can never, ever be an expert on your intent. Your internal world, your motivations, your reasons, your intentions, that is private territory. You are the sole authority there. And claiming that authority is the ultimate act of self-trust. It's the antidote to narrative override.
And so the final takeaway is this. Self-concept corrosion works by turning you from a person into a project that is perpetually flawed and always in need of management. But you are not a project, you are a person. No one else gets to be an expert on your internal intent. Realizing that is what breaks the cycle. Your awareness is the tool, and your self-trust is the active power that protects your autonomy. The most dangerous lie is the one someone else tells you about who you are, and the most powerful truth is the one you decide to tell yourself.